Hey, Brandon here, and Kat is here again as well.
Hello.
And we're going to do episode 6 of the Channeling Source podcast. And we're going to do a full channel mode interview once again. So I'm going to be going into full channel mode, channeling my spirit guides, the angels, and source. Kat is going to be asking them questions, and I'll be channeling through what's for the highest good to be brought through regarding those questions. So, pretty pumped about this. The topic is about sex and sexuality, and it potentially goes pretty deep and goes to some pretty interesting places based on, I think, some of the questions that Kat came up with for this episode. So, I'm excited to see what comes through. And of course, my intention is that this is just fully for the highest good. This brings through whatever is going to help you guys out, in addition to being potentially awesome information for you to know about. And of course, there will be information on channeling and my spirit guides in the description. Like, for example, their names are the Angelic Collective of Xorbítal. And channeling also has like an energetic transmission for the highest good, in addition to just the words, excuse me. So you can check that out below. Kat, did you want to say anything before we get started?
Yeah, I was going to say for a little bit of context, I am in a master's in counseling program right now, and I am working as a grad assistant at my school with a sex therapist. So I have been doing a lot of research lately around sex and sex positivity. So a lot of my questions are going to kind of come from that. But I am really excited to get into this and to see what comes through.
Okay. So I'm getting to jump into full channel mode here. So I might edit it so it kind of jumps to that a bit more quickly, though if jumping into full channel mode goes quickly, then maybe not. So I'm gonna step out of the way, jump into full channel mode. Let's see what my spirit guides, the angels and source would like to bring through regarding all these questions here. Okay. Welcome to today's episode. Yes, interesting topic. So, human sexuality, humanoid, for those of you who don't feel quite human in your incarnation, and you are welcome as well, so long as it is for the highest good for you to be here. And if it's not for the highest good to be for you to be here, you will pretty much automatically click away, or you wouldn't have clicked on this or began listening to this in the first place. So you are here if you are meant to be here. Even if the topic just sounded interesting and you were wondering what came through, or if this is actually an area for you in which you are deeply wounded, for any of you listening. So, mm, we would say, if you are someone who's deeply wounded around this topic, be brave, do your best to hang in there and listen, and be open to perspective shifts that will give you a new breath, a new perspective, a new paradigm that will open this area a bit more for you so that you can have breathing room and more of a life you would like to live and have around this topic. For in some ways, that is what this episode is about, is getting to a place where you are happy with this area in your life so you can live life to the fullest and have the best life for you. So, Kat, please hit us, if you will, with the first question you feel called to ask us, whether it is intuitive and off the cuff or on the spot, or it is something you prepared ahead of time. It does not matter to us. We are ready.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
Of course.
My first question is there any best way to do sex?
No,
All right, simple.
that is our answer. Best does not always denote a judgment per se. However, in this instance, the question seems to ask, am I doing this right? Or is the person this question is in regards to doing it right? There is no right or wrong per se. As long as all parties are in agreement to have the sex and the type of sex that they are having, there are no issues, especially from our angle or the divine angle. There is nothing wrong with sex or the ways you go about it. so long as all beings are in agreement.
Mm. So we live in a pretty sex negative society right now. And by that, I mean there's a lot of judgment and shame around sex. I think there are a lot of stories about there being a best way to do sex. Um, I was wondering if you could speak on how our society became so sex negative and if we're going in a different direction in the future.
Uh, You are going in a different direction in the near future, though it will take time. For there's a bit of a split, a fight, a jumble, a lot of points of view conflicting with one another, and a lot of old world hanging on through the topic of sex as a means of control, if you will. Mm, as far as where it came from, religion is absolutely the stem of it, the trunk of it, and the thorn that is in the sides of many, as far as the points of view, the judgments, and the limited perspectives that stick many people, as well as the brainwashing and the belief hacking, if you will, that has taken place through the teachings of certain religions. In many of them, as far as some of the views that are here today in your society, there are reasons that some of those beliefs that were put in place, mm, they no longer apply as much to the modern day. So a lot of the beliefs that are sticking you or some listening or many listening, a lot of the reasons that the, as you call it, sex negative viewpoints came about, in some ways it came about from shame and guilt of those in power based on their points of view. And it had nothing to do with the truth. The problem with a lot of the views on sex in today's society that are more judgmental of it, or that condemn it, or think of it as wrong or bad, is that they are simply just not true. They don't come from the divine, they don't come from God, they don't come from the universe. They come from human projection and decisions and conclusions and judgments that make no sense, really, if you look at it from the higher realms or from a true perspective or from your heart or from your soul or from the divine whatsoever. So essentially, it all just came about from human beliefs and judgments.
Mm. Yeah, it has always seemed so unnecessary to me because, like, every other, like, I don't know, every other being, it seems like on Earth just has sex so easily without thinking about it or putting all these things as barriers to it.
True. And
Um,
exactly.
yeah, so why can't we just be that way too?
Well, you can. If you had been raised where sex was normal and there were no hang-ups in the adults around you regarding sex, no judgments, no projections, no religions telling you or people it was wrong, you would just think sex was a normal thing, as normal as opening the refrigerator and grabbing an orange and peeling it and eating it. It would just be a normal part of life you would celebrate and enjoy, which in some ways is what it's meant to be. There is no right or wrong. So you do not have to judge it as bad that things are currently not that way. However, it would be a bit healthier if sex were normalized and talked about more in society, and you'd have a lot less messed up stuff uh, that's damaging to others or to people if it were talked about openly and normalized, and people could have a bit more of a dialogue around it instead of a suppressing, compressing, wound after wound after wound you can't talk about uh, to many people. If all that went away, think of the healing that would occur for many people. It would be immense to be able to get all these things on the table, talked about, viewed in a healthy way without judgment. Everything would shift. And most people would realize it's okay. Their fantasies, the things they want, the things they don't want, the things they'd like to stay away from, the types of relationships they'd like to have. It's really all okay. It is just society, judgments, points of view that would tell you otherwise. And all that is pretty much just bullcrap.
Yeah, I think there's a belief that, and this probably comes from the church as well, because I was raised in religion, but a belief that like you have to have control on sex because like it's such a powerful desire within you, right? Like it's this powerful force, and if you don't tamp it down, then you might, assault someone or cross a line or do something not okay. But then, from my view and from doing the research, it seems like those things only happen when those sexual energies are being repressed, right, and not talked about, and then just kind of comes out. And,
Yes,
yeah.
100%.
Mhm.
It is much less healthy to repress, to suppress, to think it's wrong. That's when it kind of comes up and out forcefully. If it were allowed to flow naturally, one, you'd be allowed to think about it, get it out, talk about it with people, and get to more truth about it. Hmm. Two, once again, it is usually because of the suppression that it comes up and out so forcefully. And you always have a choice. Each being who has made any choice like that to harm another regarding sex, they always have a different choice. They always have an ability to choose differently. And getting it out in the open, where it would be discussed more openly, it would allow them to choose differently in most circumstances. And it would allow it to be a bit more monitored healthfully as well. Not that people would be prying into people's private sex lives, so to speak, as far as monitored. It would just be easier to keep track of regarding all the individuals involved.
Mm. This kind of reminds me of something else I've been wanting to ask. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. When someone is assaulted, um, when they're sexually assaulted, I've heard a belief that sort of like the dark energy of the person who assaulted them is transferred almost, and then like that person has to understand it or deal with it in the process of their own healing. I know that sounds a little bit out there. I don't know if you have any sort of like light you could shed on that.
No, we don't agree with that take.
Yeah.
We would say there is typically dark energy involved as far as the individual's thought processes, individual's choices in the matter. But anyone who is a victim, we could say, of such an assault, if we will use that word, they are not stuck with the dark energy of the assaulter, if you will. Mm, there's no reason they should be dragged down by that energy perpetually. Now, they might have that energy in their memory banks, and they very well may not like the energy of what happened or what occurred quite naturally, but they're not stuck with it. It is not part of their healing to have to go through the dark energy of the other to pop out the other side. We would say you could clear it and just be free of it and then heal in whatever ways would be best for you from there. But there's no need to re experience it per se. You still have your own light, your own aura, your own energies. No one can permanently inflict you with their energies per se.
Yeah, I guess another way of saying it would be like like someone's wounds around sex kind of getting pushed on the person that's been assaulted to a degree. Um, but I appreciate what you're saying about like you don't have to stay with that. You don't have to keep ruminating on that. You can kind of um, put it back in the hands of the person who is responsible for the assault and continue on your own journey of healing. In the mental health community, there's often a view right now, at least, that those who have been through sexual trauma, especially when they were younger, are not able to fully heal from it. That it's just going to be something that they live with, and they need to, do the best that they can to manage the symptoms. I don't personally believe that, but I wanted to hear what you had to say
You are correct in not believing in it. It is a limited point of view, a limited point. Uh, we would say if you were to look at healing in terms of modern technology versus caveman technology, that viewpoint that being inflicted with a type of sexual trauma could not heal, that is more a caveman technology standpoint. A caveman would not think, oh, it's possible to just bring our John Deere crane over to lift this huge pile of wood. A caveman would say, it's impossible to lift this huge pile of wood high into the sky. So that is where they are coming from, those practitioners in that field, not to limit them, not to say they are terrible, but just to give a true perspective, that is more where they are coming from as far as what is actually possible when they say those types of things. It is absolutely possible for a being to heal from a trauma. Many of the technologies in modern society, in many modern modalities like talk therapy, they would need a bit of a refresh, a renewal, and new energy and new standpoints coming in to get to the place where they could effectively deal with some of those things all the way, like you are talking about. For it is possible, they just need a renaissance, if you will, regarding healing. Or they need to bring in more of the ancient technologies of healing, more of the energy healing, more of the channeling, even more spirits, as well as new technologies regarding healing in those fields that are more about energy and channeling and things like that. And through progress, many will find it was possible to heal many of the things deemed impossible to heal all along. It just takes a few new things.
about that. Okay. Mm. A common method in therapy right now is to just talk about the trauma a lot, kind of like a narrative type of therapy where they go back into the memories and maybe just rehash them or try to rewrite them. Do you see that as ever being helpful, or is that something that could actually be re traumatizing for the person?
In most cases, it would be helpful. However, they need to address the energy underneath the issue. That's what's missing at that standpoint. If they were to instead say, hey, let's get to the energy underwriting this reality existing for you, and let's begin to shift that. And each of our sessions will take 30 minutes to shift the energy underneath your wound, your trauma, your experience here. That would be more effective and eventually would get them to a more healed state than always just talking about it all the time. There's nothing wrong with this, and conversations can be a great way for humans to shift things. Even this, in a sense, is a conversation, and our words will shift things for you and those listening, along with the energies of the channel, if you will. So, in a sense, we are addressing both when you speak with us through Brandon like this, or when you speak with your own guides. However, there are other energetic techniques that practitioners could bring into sessions for clients that would begin to shift these things more quickly if the client were on board with them.
Are you able to see from your end, like where the field of therapy is going in the future? Will it be evolving more quickly? And then that
Yes.
for 50 years.
It is definitely moving towards an energy-based thing, over time, and that might not be something that happens, next year. However, many times to fully heal, you have to address energy, uh, and the reality of how the world really works. And by how the world really works, in this instance, we don't mean taxes, economy, grown up land, if you will, 9 to 5 job. We mean, oh, how things are energy and how reality works and how you can shift realities. You have to take into account how things actually work to shift things many times. And sometimes someone finds a roadmap that doesn't totally take into account how everything works, but it sort of works. So they kind of keep going back to that because they've kind of discovered something that works. And that's all great. However, if you'd like to effectively heal something or approach something, figuring out the basis of reality is really going to be where you strike gold and have good luck with all that. Uh, we could also talk about, in another example, let's say you're trying to freeze water and make ice. Now, if you were to live in a society, let's pretend for a second, that ignored temperature and pretended temperature didn't exist, well, it'd be very difficult to make ice. So many might be attempting to put water into fire to make ice. Many might be trying to put water into uh, mm, leaving it out overnight to make ice, and they would realize it wouldn't happen until winter came, so they would think, oh, you just have to wait until winter happens for ice. But oh, temperature doesn't exist, we can't possibly fathom that temperature would be the reason that this water is turning into ice. So that's mm, sort of how some modalities are operating if they don't take into account energy, intuition, and more of the actual building blocks of the universe and reality.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I feel like in my own journey of healing, like things didn't really start to shift until I was attuned to Reiki, and then it was like very fast from there. Um,
Exactly.
yeah,
Because
uh,
that's more aligned with how things actually work.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So okay, so I have, not to get like too far into personal things, but I have come
You
really
can go
far.
as far as you feel called.
Okay, thank you.
The audience will resonate with mm, what you feel called to bring to the table.
Okay, yeah. I guess I'll just frame it as I used to really struggle with a lot of wounds related to sexuality. And I feel so passionate about the realm of sex therapy and about talking about this now because I do feel like I have come really far in my journey. And I believe that's like possible for everyone. Um, some things that I still am struggling with, though, I wanted to address. And part of that is in the realm of like sexual fantasies, because from my research, I know that like people have all kinds of fantasies. Like being sex positive means not judging them, uh, but in my head, I still am judging them. I'm like, okay, that's fine for other people, but for me, like it feels weird, and I end up feeling like guilt and shame afterwards. Um, and so I guess I'm just wondering, like, why, how do I put this? Um, are are any fantasies wrong? Do fantasies align with like what we truly believe? Are they random? Like why do they occur like they occur?
In one sense, it does seem you are looking at fantasy as if one pops up, oh, I morally align with this. Well, morals are an entirely other conversation we could talk about for who decides what is moral or immoral. That kind of dissolves into judgment very quickly. And what we do not mean by that is, mm, oh, rob a bank and go do things that harm people just because morality doesn't exist and it's all judgments and projections. We would say a more awakened individual would tend to come from consciousness and what is true to them, what is light to them. It would be a bit more source led or guided if they channeled or were divinely guided. So they would tend to do good and what is of the light in the world, anyways, without morality. They just wouldn't be. Limited by morality. So they could just follow their divine guidance, even in stickier situations or trickier situations in a way that aligns with the divine. So now that that is out of the way, let's focus a bit more on your question regarding fantasies and sexual fantasies explicitly. There's a lot of guilt and shame around that for you based on your programming when you are a human child. Nothing more. It is really just your programming and the beliefs that were hammered into you by parental figures, religious figures, etc., while you were growing up. So, healing baby cats, if you will, you as a child would be one key to unlocking this and beginning to shift it for you. The other part of it would be learning to be non judgmental with yourself. For fantasies can sometimes arise as exploring a possibility for you. Sometimes it can arise from a past life if you had a wonderful experience in some variety regarding certain fantasies or something similar to a certain fantasy in a past life. So there might be more metaphysically to it than you might initially think when a fantasy occurs. Also, think about the energies you're in. There are people all around, and there are people fascinated by sex, and people watching sex on the internet all the time, and all the houses in the neighborhood around you, or maybe even in buildings as you drive to work. So, there are absolutely fantasies, sexual energies, focus on sex, just floating around in the cloud of energy, if you will, all around you, or even around the people listening. So it makes sense to us that a cloud of sexual fantasy might easily float on by your house one day, and you're, where did that come from? Why am I thinking about this? So not all the fantasies are yours per se, and that is something to check into intuitively as well. If you are afraid of certain fantasies, oh, is this even my fantasy in the first place? And even if it is, you can say, interesting, where is this coming from? Is this something I need to explore? Or is this just something that just seems to be popping in and saying hello right now? What is this trying to show me? And in some ways, it could be leading you deeper into your healing to see some of the fantasies and recognize they're quite natural to be there. And there's actually nothing wrong with them per se, even if you don't agree with them on a certain level or on a mental level or anything else like that. We would, of course, say there's nothing wrong with the fantasies in the first place. So, to reiterate, you might wish to ask, is this fantasy mine when it shows up? Mm, And you might further wish to ask, well, is this something I truly would like to experience? Is this something I'd truly like? And then you may further wish to ask, should I pursue this? Would it be lightest and best and bring about the best reality for me to ask for this or try this in some way and see what you get? For your healing, it may be found in exploring some of your fantasies and working through some of the beliefs, some of the emotions, some of the mental ideas and tie ups that come up as you move towards them or work through some of the beliefs that come up, even just mentally.
I appreciate that answer. And at the same time, there's a part of my brain that wants to like almost argue with it and say like that like mine still aren't okay. Or I guess it's like I'm struggling with the distinction between seeing the fantasies come through and accept them and then having them come through and like masturbating or like getting involved in them and getting that energy out. Because I think to me it feels like okay, that's a way of engaging with it. And I think part of me is still afraid of like that energy being wrong somehow and then sort of like manifesting something of like a lower vibrational nature.
Yeah, that won't happen.
Okay.
And we would also ask, wrong how? How would it be wrong?
Uh, I guess because like I'm interested in like power dynamics and like not fully like into the BDSM community, but like learning about that and kinks and I'm interested in it. I'm interested in the power dynamics, but I think because I come from a history of having been assaulted, there's still this part of me that's like, well, playing with those things is wrong, or like that's still coming from a wound, even though I know that's not true. And I know that there are a lot of people who have either not been assaulted and love being in the BDSM community, or have been assaulted and are using it to heal or are using it in a different way. So I know it's not as black and white as that, but I think like for me personally, it feels like, for instance, if I have a fantasy about being dominating, then that means like, oh, that means that I want to assault someone. Or if I have a fantasy about being submissive, then that means that I wanted to be assaulted. I don't believe that cognitively, but like that's kind of the stuff I'm struggling with it.
Well, that was the programming that was beaten into you, per se, from childhood. Not necessarily literally in all regards. We will say your desire for those sexual experiences, you are correct. It does not come about because you had an experience of assault. It is actually just something you healthily desire. And it in no way means you are in agreement to this actually unrelated thing that happened to you earlier in your life. So we will explain a little bit more deeply. It is okay to experience biological urges, which are pre wired into you from birth, and even before that, genetically, that have to do with certain dynamics that lean towards things like BDSM or uh, power dynamics, as you say. That is actually a biological response in your body and actually doesn't have to do with the assault itself. There may be some tinges around it in your mind because of your experiences, uh, though there are plenty of people who never had an experience like that who are into things like BDSM. So let's delve a little bit deeper. Give us one moment. In some ways, you are actually exploring a part of your soul through the sexual desires that are arising. For your soul actually did come here this lifetime to experience sex in a certain way and actually delve into things around sex and heal things for you uh, in your genetic line around sex. So there are actually ancestral wounds you are working through your experience here that you are actually fine-tuned on a soul level to heal and work through. However, that absolutely does not mean that your biological urges for sex are wrong in some way. And we would also, of course, ask the question, wrong according to who? Mm, there's no one to judge it as wrong, really. We realize there are plenty of people out there who do or who would. However, when you realize that the judgments don't have to matter and they don't mean anything, it's just something they were taught into. That is why we phrase it as in there is no one to judge you, where the judgments do not actually exist in truth, or when you look at things regarding what is true, judgments just aren't true.
Yeah. What do you mean when you say that my soul has been fine tuned to dig into this in this life?
Mm. You could say you took with you the blueprints from source that you needed to heal a genetic line regarding sexual experiences and sexuality. And this is actually something you are healing for other people by digging into this topic, healing it for yourself, healing it yourself regarding what has happened and regarding all the guilt and the shame. And then you can take this package of healing, package of healedness, this the results of your experimentation around this, if you will, metaphorically, and you can hand it to others and say, look what I found, look at the healing I've procured. However, it was something you were destined for all along. So you're actually bringing healing and light to the earth by exposing some of these areas, bringing awareness to them, asking questions about sex and delving into it. And it's something you'll be able to bring light to others regarding as you heal from your experience and find the things that work for you to get you out of guilt, get you out of shame, and give you a healthy and true perspective that you can bring to the world around this area. For it is sorely needed. If you look at the damage that religion has done, that repression has done, that society as it is and how it has done regarding the topic of sex and how it has wounded people or wounded even you, it is an area that sorely needs transformation, which is something you can bring. And that is the fine tuning we speak of. It's both healing your genetic line and it's also you healing others and yourself regarding sex in a way.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. Thank
It
you.
is like something you are wired to do.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and I do think it's so important. Like on when I've been in like the middle of that shame and guilt, like I it makes it just like compresses. Like I feel like it makes me live a life that's smaller, or it tucks me into myself, versus when I can come to sex from a more positive way, or when I can shed some of that shame and guilt, I just kind of like authentically expand, and I'm able to just be more present to my life and to show up for my life more.
Mm.
um, so I
Because
can see
sex is
how.
meant to be a part of life. For those who have that wiring and who are interested in it and have the biological urges for it, it's actually meant to be a tasty and beautiful part of their lived experience on Earth.
I
We
think
would also say one thing. Sorry to interrupt.
you can continue.
One of the ways that you are wired biologically, you being interested in things that are more power play, BDSM, or things that, or at least being interested uh, fantasy wise regarding things that are a bit more kinky, if you will. You are wired that way and interested in it so that you will delve into it and heal it and bring that healing to others. It's part of your soul's plan, if you will. And it doesn't have to be a main focus from here on out or the only thing you focus on or do. We are just giving you a bit more perspective around why some of these things exist while you have guilt and shame around them.
Mm, okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because at the same time there's judgment. There's a part of me that like knows there's light there, and that sees like kinky power play. There's a part of me, and probably like a bigger part, that sees it as just really cool and interesting and like a lot to explore. Um, and especially with the research I'm doing, like I'm I don't know. I am learning, and I hear validated from you that like it's not from my assaults. And I think something that helped me too was hearing that like anyone could use any type of sex in order to be like self-harm, because that's another belief I've heard is like, okay, if you've been assaulted, you're going to go to be a BDSM or kink to like hurt yourself, or to like self-sabotage, or to because you have low self-esteem from that.
That is only for some, as you say.
Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. And if you're going to do that, like you could choose any type of sex to do that with too. um, but okay. um, Yeah, I guess this is pivoting a little bit, but another area I wanted to explore was relationship structures. I think another reason why some people kind of tamp down on their sexual energy is because monogamy is the dominant like relationship structure right now, and there's a big emphasis on marriage. And I think maybe some people are afraid to like what would happen like if they would maybe cheat or kind of go past those boundaries, if they let their sexual energy be free. Um, do you see like consensual non-monogamy or like polyamorous relationships being a bigger thing in the future, or is there a more balanced way to do it where maybe there's like all types of relationship structures, but we're just like less, I don't know, less strict about it, less monitoring it all the time?
Yes, it will be a bit more free in the future as other relationship structures are discovered and put in place and experimented with. Mm, we would also say uh, there is no wrong relationship per se. You have to look at what works for you. And regarding monogamy, polygamy, and all those sorts of things, you also have to look at the history of those things. Well, where did they come from? Why is it this way? So many just accept it blindly in your today's society, as far as, well, this is the way things are and this is how they work. But many have never asked, like, oh, is there a better way? Or, oh, what would be the optimal way for me, regardless of what everyone else says? And for some, that very well may be monogamy. And they may find that they don't feel in any way, shape, or form sexually repressed or harmed or like their sexual energy isn't free enough for them in that relationship structure, if you will. That feels just fine to them and that works best for them. Others may find that getting into a relationship is the worst thing at all for them in the first place, and they should just have one night stands all the time. That would work far better. However, it's because they judge that or think it's wrong that they force themselves into relationships or marriages because that's what everyone says to do. That's what society says to do. That's what the church says to do. That's the right quote unquote way to do things. And then they mess themselves up in a sense, trying to jam themselves into the box of everyone else's judgments, projections, ideas, what everyone else says. It's such a trap for them. Not necessarily marriage is a trap or monogamy is a trap, but everyone else's judgments, opinions, thoughts, projections, and them stuffing themselves into a box to try to fit that. That is the trap we are talking about here. So you have to look at intuitively, well, what is best for me? And you have to be honest with yourself and be willing to move towards that to begin to heal some of the societal structures. It is literally just choosing for you instead of choosing for others and their beliefs, which their beliefs might not even be true for them intuitively. If they were to actually awaken and put their awareness on it and check in with their intuition, they might find that many of the societal quote unquote truths, in this case, they'd be more just societal projections or judgments or stories, were actually not their truth all along. And it was very much stemming them and keeping them from a life fully expressed that they would truly like to live. So, you have to ask yourself what would truly bring you to life, be lightest for you, give you the best possible life for you, and be willing to have that and move towards that. That is how you break free of the societal programming in a way. Intuition is one of those ways, as well as some of the ways we've talked about with energy healing, which will begin to bring that clarity and heal and remove some of those stories or projections or judgments or bring you the realizations to help you break out of some of those restrictions. So, you have to ask, what is your soul calling you towards? Now, hmm, what will change in the future? People will be more willing to ask what is best for them, and more people will be more willing to see that marriage is just a construct and it really doesn't have anything to do with their modern life except everyone told them to do it. So, some people will choose to get married. It will still feel right to them for whatever reason. And some people will become polyamorous. Some people will just move towards having one night stands and, or sex buddies, if you will, sex friends. There's no wrong answer per se. You have to ask your soul.
Yeah. Yeah, I will add too that like there has been research on some of the judgments around polyamory and consensual non-monogamy. And the research has shown that a lot of the judgments, aren't true. They're not really based in truth. But that stigma around those communities can kind of bring issues for people who are trying to explore and push forward in that way. So hopefully this conversation, more conversations like this can kind of help to reduce that stigma.
Absolutely. It's more about what will work for you, regardless what anyone thinks.
Yeah. Hmm. I think part of it too that I found, because I used to think that I was created more for polyamory, and I mean, maybe again in the future, but I think at this point I've realized that it's more of just letting myself feel what I feel and feel different depths of intimacy with different people and not automatically put a label on it or feel like I need to explore it in certain ways. And that's just been for me in my path. But I think that was kind of important because in the past I was like, oh, if I feel this, this means I think I was trying to put it back in a monogamy box of like, oh, if I feel this towards this person, that means I have to go towards this person in the same way I would the boyfriend I'm currently with and explore this path fully. Um, and instead, it's more of just like, okay, I recognize that I deeply appreciate this person, or I really value this relationship, or I feel that we have this kind of chemistry, but I'm perfectly fine with just letting that be and just having that awareness be there. And that feels like a more open way to live versus kind of getting in my head and feeling like I need to either leave one relationship for another or just getting very stressed about what that could possibly mean. Um, if that makes sense.
That in your head is probably the worst place to go in most instances. You have to be open to the possibilities, what feels best to you, what your intuition and divine guidance is saying. We would always say, like we just said previously, choose what is best for you.
Okay, well, that about wraps up my questions. Um, is there anything else that you want to add before we close up?
Yes. Much of this is about not judging yourself. That goes for you, for the audience, for everyone, actually. Or if you were to just remove judgment from the equation and projection from the equation and just get to what is true, or allow something else to filter up that could be more true, we would argue full truth would be best. Hmm. That really would solve most everything if just the judgments were eradicated. For then you would be able to see what things actually are and things as they are. And we'll add in getting rid of stories would be a good idea too. The judgments, the stories, the projections, the things you put on it. Oh, this means this, that means that. Sex with this person means this. Sex with that person means that, etc., etc. Again, you would really solve a lot just by not judging anything and by undoing where you hold judgments regarding this topic or even relationships in general. Your best life is not going to be found in judgment, in judging things, or in living according to others' judgments or according to what others think. In most instances, 99.999989899999987%. We'll give you a silly number like that just to hammer home the points. Sex is supposed to be a natural, beautiful part of life. It's meant to be enjoyed and it's meant to be healthy. So many of you condemn yourselves because you don't have sex like another person. You have this thought. You think about someone in this certain way. Well, have you ever considered that perhaps in many ways you're probably wired to in some level because that is a very hardwired thing in the human body, if you will, is that sexual energy, sexual desire, sexual expression, and it's meant to flow and be a natural part of your energy fields. So, no wonder it tries to come up and out or find some way to exist when you go to suppress it. It's a very important part of your existence here if it's part of your makeup. And for most people on the planet, it definitely is. So, we would say allow it. Allow it to be, allow it to flow. If something comes up that's judged by society, you can go, oh, interesting. It is very interesting that thing came up, whether it was a thought or a fantasy or an urge or a desire. And from there, you can go, wow, well, what would be the best choice for me to make regarding this? So, well, if we chose this over here, it would definitely blow up my life. So maybe that's not the best choice. Well, I'll just at least acknowledge that that was there and we'll move on with something that would be one of the better choices for me in my life, hopefully the best one. So, that's our recommendation, really. If you'd like to begin healing this and the societal wounding regarding sex, is dig into your own judgments, dig into the beliefs that others handed you that aren't true, dig into the stories, dig into the projections, and begin to sit with, oh, is this true? Oh, is this true? Oh, is this true? Oh, where did this come from? Where did the societal idea about sex come from? And even religious ones, or even certain mainstream spiritual ones. mm, be careful if it begins to sound like a religious take or a judgment. You're probably going down the wrong path, is what we'll say. If you see a spiritual take that seems like religion repackaged for new age or something akin to that. But we will leave you there. The energies are really going to be the thing that gets you with this one, with this session here. Mm, the words will be helpful. The words will be meaningful for many of you. However, it is the energies underneath that will really cook this area for you and begin to shift things. And you may notice a lot of interesting things coming up for you around this topic after you listen in the weeks ahead. So hang in there, be in allowance of what comes up. Allow yourself to, as long as it is healthy and for the highest good of all involved, indulge yourself regarding this topic. And we will see you later in another channeling session or something akin to this. So, thank you, Kat, for your questions and being a part of this once again. It is an honor to get to channel for you and the audience here. We will leave you there. Uh, farewell for now.
Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. So I hope that was helpful for you. I hope that this was helpful for everyone else listening. Did you have anything you wanted to say in parting before we start to wrap this up?
Not really. I mean, I guess just take from it what feels best. I feel like your guides did amazing at answering.
Cool.
And if anything I said felt wrong, just take what feels best.
Well, in some ways, your job is to like spark them channeling and spark them spark them's maybe not the best way to phrase it, but spark them bringing through the things that are going to help the people listening and you know, if that's as well, for the highest good. So you did great is what I'm hearing. They're showing me the round of applause for you, so I wouldn't worry too much. As long as you're asking questions, you're probably good. Like, someone's gonna get something out of it, so
Yeah. Okay. All right. Uh, yeah. Well, thank you. I'm glad I got to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being here because this format and like the questions you asked and how this turned out probably couldn't exist in the same way without you. So thank you for being here and happy birthday as well, because your birthday's tomorrow when we're recording this. If you're okay with that being sent out publicly to people.
The demo is no, just kidding. Yeah, thank
And
you. I appreciate it.
yeah, you're welcome. No, but thank you again for
No,
being
thank you.
willing to delve into this topic that's maybe a bit more taboo according to some people out there, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I felt so much anxiety beforehand, but once it started, that just completely left, no matter what I asked. So I hope other people feel the same level of like peace and understanding that kind of came through for me.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It was kind of like you were burning things off beforehand and excuse me, getting ready to ask those questions and perhaps even have others healed through this experience and being part of facilitating that, much like I was burning things off in a different way leading up to this.
Yeah.
For me, I was just a bit more irritated, but that's okay. It's just the thing that comes up before things like this sometimes. So, all right. Well, I don't want to have this drag too much for anyone listening, but I hope, may what's for the highest good for all occur. And anything else I need to say before we wrap this up here? Nope. We could just end it. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.